Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. Today we're going to be making number 5 in the treat box series. I'm going to make each of the boxes the same size overall, so you can use one or more numbers in conjunction with one another. And in addition, I try to use 1/8 of an inch rather than 1/16, so you can easily scale up or down the size of the boxes. We will start by making a template, which you will then draw around to create your front and back panels. The starting cardstock is 4.5 by 7.5. Either score on your scoreboard or mark from top to bottom with a pencil at 1.5 inches, 3 inches on the short side, and on the long side 5/8 of an inch, 1.5 inches, 2 1/8 of an inch, 3 inches, 3 5/8 of an inch, 3 7/8 of an inch, 4.5 inches, and 6. Once you've marked all your lines or scored all your lines, you'll use the various points where the score lines intersect as per the red lines on this template here to create your number 5. You'll then cut that out and use that to create your front and back panels for your box. We'll now make the side panels to join the front and back together. And on this template here, you can see that I've marked the length of each of the sections of the box. I would recommend that you measure your front and back panels to make sure that the length of each of your sections is the same as mine. If there is any difference at all, you will need to adjust the length of the strips I'm going to give you and the placement of your score lines accordingly, because the length of all of the strips are based on these measurements. The opening on this particular box is here with a 1.5 inch section which lifts up at the top. You could have, of course, changed yours so that this whole top section lifts up by not sticking any of these elements down. Alternatively, you can put the opening wherever you so choose, just amend the length of the strips accordingly. These boxes are a good way of using up some of your scraps cardstock. So you could, for instance, cut this strip as a separate strip in its own right, which would be 3 7/8, and then add on another 1/2 inch, for instance, as a glue tab. So you could cut each of these sections individually if you've got scraps you want to use up. All you need to do is just make sure that you add on enough for a glue tab each time so that you can add the strips together as you work your way around the box. The construction method on all of the boxes is the same, so if you've watched any of the other boxes, once I give you the strip measurements, you might want to take those down and then skip the rest of the video. You can, of course, make the depth of the box any size you so choose. Because these boxes are for demonstration purposes only, the depth of my boxes are going to be 1 inch. Therefore, each strip of card is going to be 2 inches wide, scored at 1/2 inch and 1.5 inches. And you can, of course, change up the depth. I've made some boxes which are 2 inches deep. In that case, my strip was 3 inches wide, scored at 1/2 and 2.5. The first strip is going to be strip A, which on this template here is the red section. So that's going to come around like so with a glue tab. That is going to be 9 5/8 of an inch long, scored at 1.5, 4.5, 6, 7.5, and 9 1/8. Strip B, which is the purple strip, that's going to come down across the bottom and up to this element here with a glue tab. That's 10 inches long, scored at 3 1/4, 4 7/8, 6 3/8, 8 9.5. Strip C is going to run on this internal section here in blue. That is 8 3/4 inches long, scored at 1.5, 2 1/8, 3 5/8, 5 1/8, 6 5/8, and 8 1/4. And then finally strip D, which is going to run up this side along the top and create the opening and the tab to run down inside the opening. That is 8 7/8 of an inch long, scored at 3 7/8, 6 7/8, and 8 3/8. Once you have your 4 strips cut and scored, you can start by folding and burnishing along the long side glue tab on each of the pieces. Once we've scored our long sections on all of the pieces, we're now going to fold and burnish the vertical score lines. And what you might want to do is, as you fold and burnish them into the direction that they're going to run in as they run around the box. So for instance, this first piece here will fold over like so. So that will come around like so. And then, so that is a mountain fold. The next one here is going to be a valley fold. So as you're folding and burnishing, you might want to take that as an opportunity to manipulate each of the sections into the shape that they're going to run in on the outside of the box. Once you've folded and burnished all of your pieces, on all of the strips, cut up the score line within the 1/2 inch side tab. So we're effectively separating each of these sections like so. And on strips A, B and C, I'm going to remove the bottom corners like so and take a wedge from the glue tab at the end where we join the strips together. In addition, in strip A, at the end opposite the 1/2 inch glue tab, I'm going to add a small finger notch, which is just going to help us get in and out of the box, like so. So repeat that process for strips A, B and C. When we come to strip D, which is the one that's going to come around like so, I'm going to cut up each of these score lines within the side tab, as we did on the previous strips. I'm going to remove the bottom squares like so. However, rather than being a glue tab, this is the tab that's going to sit down inside the box. My personal preference is to round off the corners of the end of that tab like so. So once your pieces are all prepared, you can add glue to the side strips and start to add your pieces into place around the box like so. Once you get to the end of a strip, secure the next strip into place with the glue tab and then continue round until you get to this point here at the top. So take your time, hopefully with the measuring of your template, and if you've made any adjustments accordingly to your strips, you should find that your pieces fit in place. If you do get any overhang at all, you can always go in and trim at the end if you need to. I'm just going to reposition that. So take your time working your way around, sticking each of the sections in place. So now I've got to the top of the box, I'm going to completely move this lid section out of the way. I want to make sure there's absolutely no way that I'm going to stick that down by mistake. So I can add the lid in, and then that's obviously going to come down and sit in the top like so. So I'm going to keep that out of the way, and I'm going to just work my way round, and I'm going to stick down where tabs overlap one another. This is just going to help the box maintain its shape and just create some rigidity around the edge. So do that all the way around. I'm going to take my second number 5, add construction glue all the way around onto the long tabs. The construction glue will give me a little bit of more time to manipulate and maneuver the top panel into place all the way around the box like so. I'll give you the measurements for the mat layer. The mat layer will start with a piece which is 4 1/4 by 7 1/4, and again I would recommend you make this out of copier paper or some scrap, particularly when you're working with the angles and there's quite a few of them on the number 5. You might not like the way the mat layer sits on the box, and you might want to do some manipulation and adjustment of angles. For instance, this was the first one I cut, and I was happy with the piece all the way around, but I didn't like this big gap here, so I made a second one with a slight adjustment, and that just sits on the box and has got a nicer look to it. So these are the measurements I'm going to give you. Mark from top to bottom on your piece at 1 1/4, 1 3/8, 2 7/8, and 3 inches, and this is on the short side. On the long side, mark at 5/8, 1 1/4, 1 7/8, 3, 3 1/2 plus a 16th, 3 5/8, 4 1/4, and 6. So there are 2 lines here which are very close to one another. Once you've got those marked, you will use the lines to create the mat layer as per the red lines on here, and this angle here will start from the inner line coming down and runs up to the 3 1/2 plus the 1/16th, and this one on this side runs from the inner and will come down to the 3 5/8. There aren't 2 lines in here, but these are the measurements that they will run into. So if you use that for your template for your mat layer, that will then give you this shape here, and I'm now going to stick that on the top of the box. This is the number 5 treat box finished. Again, the opening at the top. The final thing I'm going to do is just shut the lid and just see whether I need to take anything off the front of the tab here. So I'm just going to shape that slightly, take a slight wedge off of there on both sides so that that lid can now fit down neatly inside the top of the box. I'll just bring in one of the other boxes in the series. You can see these are the same width and the same height, and these two are the same depth, so you can see how the boxes will work in conjunction with one another. So that's the next box finished in the number series. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.